listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to Season 25, Episode 8 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
I'm Stork.
Mo.
And Mo!
Hey, Mo!
For those...
You might remember him from such hits as the Strategicon.
He ran Shibuya Nights for us in a one-shot on a Saturday, which is up. You can watch that.
Yep.
But who are you and what do you do that makes you famous?
My name is Mo. I'm from the Bay Area, and I have a funded Kickstarter.
Yes, as of
Woo! As of
20 minutes
yeah,
ago.
As of like an hour ago.
yeah, it's very exciting.
So I'm like an official game developer now.
And what's the name of your game?
Nice.
Shibuya Nights.
What's your elevator pitch?
It's an anime fantasy role-playing game set in a fantasy version of steampunk Japan. So
Nice.
yeah,
As opposed to the actual steampunk Japan.
there are no cell phones, so that's the
Nice.
difference.
That's good for every GM.
That's the wisest decision you can make in a role-playing game setting is to not have cell phones. Mysteries. Oh, there's a mystery?
Right?
There we go. Solved.
It's funny listening to people trying to get over. Well, I have a device that. Can I build a device that? I'm like, that's going to take you. That's a long-term project,
I have a steam-powered phone.
right?
All right. In this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, Ryan writes in about time records and meaningful campaigns.
Oh, God.
I meant to look up the actual quote in the DMG
Yeah,
because I still have my original DMG. Well, I actually replaced it. Eric from New Jersey writes in about changing systems and El Lamasu or Yamasu. I'm not sure. It was two capital L's, so that kind of threw me.
Llamas with a double L's, isn't it?
But not two capital L's.
That's true.
Sends us a horror story. But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're getting very low on emails again, so if you want to send emails,
Send in emails.
now's the time. happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're also on the social media. We're on, we have a forum, happyjacksforum.com. That's happyjacksforum.com. And we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and MeWe. I haven't been on MeWe in a while now. happyjacksrpg, all one word. That's happyjacksrpg, all one word. And your Kickstarter funded.
Yeah,
Which
funded.
is fantastic.
Yes. But you have 30 more minutes to go.
Oh, 30 more minutes.
If you want to get in.
SHIBUYAN, Nights with a K.
Yes.
.com. And
Stu's been studying.
well, I just went to look it up, but I didn't see a link to the Kickstarter from there.
You have to click buy a book.
Buy a book. Okay,
yeah.
all right. So go and click on buy a book, and that will take you to his Kickstarter.
There it is.
Nice.
You got 30 minutes. So it ends at 7:47.
It ends at 8 o'clock.
Oh, 8 o'clock. Okay, all right. You get more than 30 minutes, but don't wait.
Oh, okay.
Don't wait.
Okay.
All right. First, you want to read the first email since you're our guest?
Say we're on the special. No, did you do the thing
What?
for social medias?
Yeah, I just did all that, yeah. Oh, and if you want to watch us live, go to happyjacks.org/live, happyjacks.org/live on Fridays at 7:05 p.m.
Doing it live.
Do it live.
But it's only 5 if we're early.
Unless we're early, which has never happened.
Okay, so just for reference, before we read the email, do you want the quote?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. Okay. According to the Dungeon Master's Guide, page 37, Gary Gygax said, game time is of the utmost importance. Failure to keep careful track of time expenditure by player characters will result in many anomalies in the game. The stricter the structure.
No, we were all
I think it's supposed to
distracted
be
by Mo's
structure.
big size.
Is this on the chat?
No, I Googled it.
Oh, okay.
The stricter of time is what makes recovery of hit points meaningful. Likewise, the time spent adventuring in the wilderness areas removed concerned characters from their bases of operations, be they rented chambers or battlements strongholds. Currently, the most important time structure pertains to the manufacturing of magic items. For during a period of such activity, no adventuring can be done.
Now, find the part where he says the important bullshit.
All of these demands upon game time force choices upon player characters and likewise number their days of game life. You cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept.
See, and that's
And
high
that's in,
Gygaxian.
yeah,
right
and
there.
that's in capitals. I don't know if it is in the player handbook, or in the master's guide.
I'm not sure.
So what year did this particular volume come
This
out?
would be DMG 1, so 78,
Excellent.
I'm
Perfect.
guessing?
Perfect.
I'm thinking.
That sounds absolutely correct.
Oh no!
For
yeah.
1970.
It's,
For 70.
yeah, no. And the thing. Good job. Get your job, Sue. Or Stork. The DMG is. It's one of the few places in the entire book where Gary hit the caps lock. So it is.
He says he felt very strongly about this passage of time and its effects on the campaign.
Yeah. So it is 100% actually in caps in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
The one time in the DMG where he texted like my dad.
One of the few.
And you know it was like an old school typewriter,
Yeah.
too. Right?
And I mean, and it is high Gygaxian.
It was. Did you see how hard that was to read?
You cannot
It's
write in high
extremely-
Gygaxian unless the passive voice is used.
Yes. Very difficult
And
to read. I kept trying to flip it. No, that's
No.
No,
That's
that's
the
the
magic
word.
of
Yeah.
Gygaxian.
Stricture.
So that's the original quote. And someone wrote in about that years and years and years
yeah.
ago, and we laughed and laughed and laughed. But anyway,
Yeah.
to the email.
Hey all, hope you're having a nice day. I listen to your cast and actual plays on occasion, but I have not been here for a whole 10-year legacy. So, I have not been here for the whole 10-year legacy. So, forgive me if this is just beating a dead horse. We talked about this 10 years ago, says Stu.
Yeah.
I was listening to an actual play and I heard you guys mention a quote by the Gygax with much disdain. I personally found to be one of the most useful pieces of advice in regards to running a game, especially the raising and lowering of tension. I wanted to know if it seems like you folks have, why it seems like you guys have such contempt for it. Since I'm not fluent in High Gygaxian, I shall paraphrase.
I'm not either, obviously.
Do I have to read that again?
Oh no.
No, you're fine.
I'm sorry. I did not read the at the time. I apologize.
If allowed enough time, I'm going to skip to halfway. If allowed enough time, the PCs will solve any problem the GM can come up with because they are.
Oh no, it looks like just that one.
okay.
Yeah. It
Sentence
is a
was-
bold statement. That's where he started.
Yeah, that's back in the
No meaningful role-playing game can be played without strict timekeeping. It is a bold statement, but I have found it more true than not. By nature, the teamwork of having multiple PCs and one GM, the situation is made easier for the characters, be it combat, trap, puzzle, or social situation or whatever. If allowed enough time, the PCs will solve any problem the GM could come up with because they are committed. They are a committee and the GM is just one. The only way to add tension without making certain actions outrightly impossible is to control the time they have to solve the problem. I do not see how one can add tension or consequence without keeping track of time. Even story games or PBTA require time to be kept in regard to consequences. Otherwise, nothing the PCs do matters, or at least I cannot see how it would. If you are sent out to get food for your community and spend a month doing drugs in the desert with a guy named Stinky Pete instead, you should have failed your task of getting food for your community. It's taking the player's choice away by saving the community can survive without your character indefinitely. It seems like nothing your character does matters if you do not keep track of time. Feel free to bring up something I am missing because it seems pretty solid advice. Thoughts? And no.
Okay.
From
Well,
Ryan.
P.S.
his paraphrase.
I agree with how it's put in this email,
Yes.
But
but it's different.
you cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept. That's like one true wayism, and that's horseshit.
Well, and I think we're talking about two different things too.
Yes.
Having the Ryan's talking about having time limits or pressure put on the party by time.
That is not strict time records.
Right, which is completely different than strict time records. And I 100% agree. Like having a time limit to things is a way to put pressure on people, a way to raise that temperature on whatever you're running.
That's the AC,
And,
not an explosion.
Why is it on?
I guess
Go
I
ahead.
turned it on. I thought you wanted it on.
No, it's cold outside.
All right.
Unplug that mic.
But I think that, but that's different than keeping time records. I don't know if it matters if you keep track of exactly how many days they're wandering through the forest.
You get it with a spreadsheet like this. So
Yeah.
there are 2 hours spent
Yeah.
walking the horses, another
Yeah.
hour cobbling them, another hour gathering water. We're that's
Yeah.
not a meaningful campaign. That's just tables
Data and
publishers.
records. That's a lot of work. So I think those are two very separate issues.
I think part of the challenge is context. When Gary Gygax is writing this, nobody had ever played a role-playing game before. So,
Except his, right.
Except his.
Right.
And so people buying this book needed to understand what are the dimensions of the fiction. So there's a certain point where time is important, and if you've never GM'd, everybody's first level GM, time becomes a relevant factor. If you've played a couple games over a couple years, I think this becomes a given that everybody gets.
You're right. You're parsing this thing together like this. It's true. Yes, and you're right as well, because there was no such thing as a GM. Nobody knew what a GM was.
Right.
Nobody. There was. He's inventing it as he goes. But it's not to say that the passage of time doesn't happen. And the one truism, just like drawing a line in the sand, is like you are playing it wrong if you don't keep a
Your
time record.
campaign is meaningless if
It's
you are
less
not
than
keeping
wrong.
strict
It's
time records.
meaningless.
That is the inverse of it.
Yeah.
To me, keeping track of time is important when it's important, and it's not always important.
Exactly.
I mean, if like in our Traveler game, you guys want to know how you're taking a jump from here to here. What is the travel time? Because you need to study, and you have to have a certain number of hours of study in order to gain a skill level or whatever. So that's kind of important. So it's like, okay, it's 5 jumps, so that's going to be 5 weeks of travel.
But
right?
we will kill you if you make us role play out 2 weeks worth
Of course,
time.
of course you will.
Likewise, you can't have everybody's birthday be the third trip unless that's a thing in the game. You know, if it's a mechanic, and it takes 4 months to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, there are other times when it doesn't matter, especially like in social situations, like a social conflict kind of thing. That can be run very fast and loose, and things can be happening in different timelines and things like that. Not completely different timelines, but the passage of time. It's just it's like when you've seen Firefly. I mean, I always thought Firefly. Oh, my dogs are howling.
There's sirens.
There's sirens. Okay.
Stay focused, Stu. Come on.
The
Firefly.
Oh my god, it's so funny when they do that. Firefly. I always thought Firefly was like interstellar travel.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're going from one star system to another. Oh no, it's all in one giant solar system that has like 11 stars in it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the travel times in that don't matter. When is the last time you've watched something where the travel time in a science fiction show from one system to another had any relevance? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and even in cowboy movies, it's the same thing. I don't need to watch them traveling through the high Sierras on their horses, getting from Deadbeat Gulch to.
The only time it would matter
El Paso.
is if you've got that one guy who's going to, while I'm on horseback, I'm going to study my spells so I can level up. That's
Which is not to say they wouldn't have an encounter. It's like you could get jumped by bandits or something on traveling, but that's when you pick up the action, right? But I think, all right, a day passes. Everybody marking your grid. What you did during that day.
Right.
I'm like,
And I think it's kind of genre specific. If everybody has to roll for dysentery every day, then every day matters. But in Star Wars, they never talk about the differences of gravity or anything like that because that's not what the story is about.
Right.
And I think we've evolved so far in role playing games that it's either a thing or it's not. And in a game, absolutely time's a thing. You want a ticking clock to create tension, but it may not be a thing overall.
yeah.
I mean, I know some DMs specifically who run really minutia campaigns, and that's part of what they and some of their players really love, making sure you have enough rations, counting out your gold, things like that. That doesn't sound fun to me at all. But if you're doing something on that micro of a level, then time does matter, and that can really affect things. It did affect things. You might have said it while I was making the dogs quiet, but when a few weeks ago in our Call of Cthulhu campaign, when Pooja was running because she was rolling every day for seeing if she caught yellow fever or not,
right?
Because she'd been exposed to it. So every day she had to roll to see if she got healthy. Those days mattered.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
we did have to keep track of those days. So it can be a very important part of the story.
And if you're running a game where resources are scarce, it's a survival game. You've got X amount of water, and you've got to make it across the desert in a certain number of time. Sure, you need to sit down and pencil out. You don't have to play every day. Oh,
No.
Are you drinking water day or you're not? But I mean, say okay, you've got this much water, and the trip is going to take you this long. So at some point, 3/4 of the way through, you're going to have a problem with water rations. Do you guys want to start rationing early and take some con penalties, or you know. I mean, there certainly are things where time is super important, and I mean, and I'm speaking really hypocritically here because in both of the games, no, not the Traveler game, but in the Call of Cthulhu game, and certainly in all the Vampire games I ran, I know what day it is.
Yeah.
But that's because that's important, because this vampire says he's going to produce a presentation of The King in Yellow at the local theater on this date.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we need to know when that date's coming up,
Right.
you know, so you have to keep track of that. And the same thing in the Call of Cthulhu game. There are things happening in the world that you guys aren't yet aware of as as time passes. I'm just kind of keeping track of those things
Yeah.
behind the scenes. So, yeah, there's definitely times, and I probably keep track of time more, I think, than my derision of this quote suggests.
Yes.
I think
But it's so absolute.
You rely on your players to keep track.
Well,
Because Pooch is amazing at
well,
it.
that's my like fail-safe check.
Yeah.
It's like June 5th? No, June 3rd. Shit.
Okay, yeah. So we check it together.
you want to get in?
No, that's fine.
I think it's one of those things where if it's supposed to be a fun game. If you were to time out like real time versus combat, it does not make sense. So
Right, sure.
like because it's kind of fast and loose, you can get as close to true as you want, but you'll never be true.
Right. Yeah. And that's fine. It's fine.
And I've played video games that
You still have a
that
meaningful campaign.
You still have a meaningful campaign. And I've played video games where you are carrying your water and your gold mounts up, and you only have a limited resources and stuff, and that's it does ratchet up tension. It's one way to play. And I've also played video games where you can carry as much as you want,
Right.
don't have to worry about eating or drinking,
Yeah.
and the quest givers will be there for months or days, and this quest never expires. So, and that's another way of playing, and they're both meaningful.
Yeah.
That's where I was going to go with that.
Yeah, I agree.
They're both fun.
All right. Well, thank you for the email, Ryan. But yeah, we actually did talk about this once.
Yeah.
We had an episode on it, and the conversation wasn't very different than it is
No,
now, I think.
I think we make fun of that quote more because the quote is kind of crazy, especially when you read it in its entirety, like the way it's phrased, and because it's in High Gygaxian,
Yes.
more than the actual like content and like philosophy behind it.
It is this. It smacks of absolutism, and it really does. When somebody says
Yeah.
you're you have to do it this way, Stu's like, oh,
We-
really?
We just like that in all forms.
Don't you tell me what to do. Am I being detained?
Exactly.
All right. Converting to a new system from Eric in New Jersey.
I will read this one. Hello to the Happy Jacks crew.
Hello.
Eric from New Jersey here saying hello and hoping that this email doesn't get too long because, Lucy, I have some splaining to do. In the meantime, take a drink. This conversation will deal primarily with fantasy role-playing, though there will be some sci-fi mentioned due to Space Wizards, which is also in all caps, I'm just saying.
Right.
Okay, here we go. I am looking to convert my favorite homebrew D&D campaign setting into another system. Stu, I know you've tried to convert a campaign into various systems, from 4E to Hero to GURPS, if I recall correctly. Man. And I am wondering how you dealt with the differences in each system when trying to convert the world, not so much the characters. Let me explain. Each game has its own basic action. Dungeons & Dragons is about killing monsters, taking their treasure, and leveling up so that you can get to do that with even bigger monsters who have even more treasure. Star Wars, West End Games version, is about fighting impossible odds, breaking into things, breaking out of things, and then blowing up said places. Shadowrun is about being assigned a heist, and then planning and executing the heist. Now, this isn't to say that every campaign is going to be like that. Heck, you be you, and do romantic comedy in Pathfinder if you like. This is more about what the systems are built to do best. So, that being said, it comes down to 3 questions. 1. What suggestions do you have about converting from one game system to another? 2. What would you consider the best action of genre systems like
Basic action.
Basic action of generic systems like GURPS or Savage Worlds? I mean, it has to be more than it's realistic or it's pulpy. Heck, feel free to talk about other systems as well when it comes to basic actions. Jason may be there and tell me I completely buggered up Shadowrun's basic action, for example, so chat away. 3. Obviously, I'm looking at GURPS or Savage Worlds to convert, but do you have any other suggestions of maybe another system to convert an old D&D 3.5 campaign that isn't D&D or Pathfinder? Anyway, I hope all is well with you. Stay drunk, stay diverse, stay gamers. Eric from New Jersey, a.k.a. Eric from NJ. All one word on the forums.
Question 1. Suggestions do you have about converting from one game system to another?
Oh, man.
Every game system doesn't take every story type. I used to play hero games for many moons, and I love hero games. I'm a diehard. Like it's amazing. It does anything,
Right.
except fantasy.
Oh, really? We played a fantasy hero.
Fantasy hero is fun. It's awesome, but you get a little loosey goosey with magical effects, and there has to be an opportunity for things to happen beyond the point system.
Okay.
Because everything is kind of measured.
Oh, all the
just
powers
so.
and everything, yeah.
And so a bag of holding is an infinitely large point pool
Yeah.
trying to
that is
convert
true.
something from, D&D
But
to
since
the system.
it's a focus that someone can take away, it's only a quarter of an infinity in points.
Right, exactly. So
And
there's
there's no activation on it though, so that's oh, no,
Always
you
on.
gotta open it.
yeah, it's always on.
Yeah, always
Well,
on.
but you gotta open it.
So every genre isn't for every system.
Yeah.
And you're going to break systems with like the dumbest things, like a bag of holding. It breaks hero system. I think PBTA, where I've spent most of my brain space for the last year and a half, is really cool at doing a lot of things, but it's particularly loosey-goosey. Unless the game is keeping track of time, it doesn't keep track of time. So you can have a great fight, and everything's going to be kind of just a general, you're throwing grenades, you got to get close. I haven't played the new Savage Worlds. GURPS is another point-based system that I think you're going to have the same challenges you
that's
have
my
with
hero.
champions.
Yeah.
Now the thing is,
I think for...
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just sticking to his first point, I know we're all getting excited. We're talking about the second point and the third point, which is like specific systems. Like, first, like, what suggestions do we have about converting from one game system to another? Like, for me, like, the first thing I'd look at is just the vibe of the game. Like, if you're moving from, something like that is like D&D and Pathfinder, 3.5, like that has a very specific vibe to how it works. And you really should break down what you and your players have liked so much about that for so long. If you've liked keeping track of time and things like that, then that's going to very much inform what systems you should be looking at. If your players and your system, like I know you're talking about like the basic action of the thing, which is kind of the second question, but if your players want to stick with their same characters and they're really married to their magic weapons, that they have some epic story that they got this weapon killing this monster, that's going to really affect where you should go, because you're going to need to find a system where those magic weapons can translate.
Right.
So that's going to be the first thing you really need to start looking at is what are they cool with keeping, or what do they insist on keeping, and what are they cool with letting slide?
Leapfrogging off that, it's very similar. Why do you want to change systems? You have to ask yourself what it is about the system that's bothering you and why you want to change it in the first place. If you're just trying to look to make the rules simpler, that's one set of systems that eliminates others. If you're looking to make the rule to have it more bounded by rules and stuff, well, then that's another bunch of systems of GURPS and Hero and stuff. If you're looking for it to be more real and more where gravity actually will affect you, well, that's another set. So you need to ask yourself what it is you want out of the system that you want to pick before you just commit. Just say, oh, this seems like it might work. Yeah. You have to say to yourself, what is it I don't like about this system and that I want to change?
Yeah.
And then look for a system that has those changes in it.
Yeah. If you're just bored,
Yeah.
then maybe put this on hold.
Yeah.
Do something completely different in another system, and maybe come back to this.
That's a wise word right there.
I have two suggestions. One is make sure you're willing for your campaign to die if you switch systems.
Yeah.
No,
Because
it's true.
that's what happened.
People
don't
That's
like
what
change.
happened with ours.
Well, we
ran-
were okay with the change. It was hard.
Well,
Continue.
then that's my second.
Yeah.
My second point is, even though I told all of the players, I don't want to retranslate the powers and feats that you have in 4th edition D&D and just convert them into either hero or GURPS. I want you to reimagine the characters themselves and then build them in that system using the confines of that system rather than trying to recreate all of the stuff that you had in D&D.
Yeah.
Even though I said that very explicitly many times, most of the players tried to recreate their characters. And the first thing we went to was Hero, and they did all kinds of crazy things. Like someone had an area effect thing that would like increase their player's speed, which, as you well know, if you don't have it's neat, but boy, if you're prepped for it and you have the little grid with all of the player characters, you know what impulses they move on and everything, it's not a problem. But if you don't and you have to suddenly remake that on the fly, that's a pain.
Your 3-hour combat is going to turn into a 6-hour combat.
Right, exactly.
Easily.
Right.
And a lot of mistakes.
And the players just didn't want to give up the stuff they had earned in the previous system. And so when it switched to Hero, that was just a hot mess because the characters was just way too complicated, and it was too large of a group. I mean, at that point we were like 8 people. Yeah. For Hero, way too.
It was like a month to make the character.
Yeah. And then we switched to GURPS, and had the same kind of problem because, especially, I mean, Hero, you can recreate everything that exists in every power and every spell you can find. You can recreate it. That's what it does.
Right.
But GURPS doesn't really do that. I mean, it kind of does a little bit, but not as easily.
Not as refined.
And so don't discount the players being disgruntled that their characters have changed and they've lost stuff that they had before. That is a big deal to a lot of players.
It does change the feel of the game a lot.
To the other side of that, I think it's important to understand how genre can work and can cheat, because you may have a fantasy story and you want to take it into outer space, right? That looks like Star Wars. Star Wars isn't science fiction, and it's like fantasy can go in outer space. It won't look like Star Trek.
Space wizards.
So
Yeah, I agree. No, so the second question, what would you consider to be the basic action of generic systems like GURPS Savage Worlds? I mean, it has to be more than it's realistic, it's pulpy. Heck, feel free to talk about other systems as well when it comes to basic actions. Jason may be there and telling me I'm completely buggered up Shadowrun's basic action, for example, so chat away. GURPS, you're going to die easy.
Well, okay, that's a sect of games. It's a subset of games. I mean, GURPS, you can die easy. A Traveler, you can die pretty easily.
Yeah.
I think
Wild Talents.
Wild Talents has some of that. So that's, I mean, you're being glib, but yeah, that system. And when your characters are fragile that way, when anybody could die at any moment, it changes the way you play, and it changes the world because now all of a sudden that kobold isn't as funny as it once was.
I'm kind of dodging his question,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's a fair question to say of generic systems, because generic systems, your basic action really depends on the setting.
Yeah.
It's not the game. It's not D20 that decides you're going to go out and fight monsters, kill them, and take their stuff.
right.
It's the setting.
Yeah.
So I think that really depends.
I agree. I think that's if you're talking like what you're saying, it has to be more than it's realistic or it's pulpy. Like, yeah, when you're talking about a generic system, they are specifically designed to not have that layer of flavor on it, so that you can put that in there.
Well, I was just looking through my old 2nd or 3rd edition GURPS Swashbuckler. That's where if you want to play pirates and play in the Golden Age of Sail, what's their basic action if you're playing a pirate campaign?
Sailing,
Or-
swinging from the mast,
Discovering places, finding treasure,
Okay, exploring.
robbing people. I mean, but GURPS, that's not what GURPS is. It's what the setting is.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing GURPS Horse Clans, you're not dying and getting a lot of scars and trying to build
I guess
a
we need
fiefdom.
to sort of figure out what he means by basic action then.
No, that's what he means. But basic action, if you look at his examples, D&D, the basic action is to kill monsters and take their treasure and level up so that you can kill even bigger monsters.
Yep.
That's its basic, and that is its basic thing. But that's the setting more than it is. It is the rules system.
Yeah, and you can see there are, I mean, like depending on how the DM runs it, Like Dragon Heist, they tried to pull away from that vibe. Like, there's still a lot of just killing things.
Oh, sure.
Unless you run it like a Bria and there's no combats whatsoever, because your fucking party starts talking their way through everything.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, you can do heist in D&D. You can do all these things, and if you do go into like Eberron, that's another flavor that can be very different than just like killing, like dungeons and killing stuff.
Right, I mean, I ran a GURPS fantasy campaign for a long time, and it was a lot like a D&D game.
Yeah.
I mean, they went around and killed stuff and searched people's pockets after they murdered them and to see what they could find, if they could get enough money to buy a better horse or something like
Yeah.
that. Oh, yeah.
But the
And-
challenge is, I'm sorry.
No, go.
The challenge is more in the conversion
Yeah,
than it is
Right.
finding the basic action.
Yeah.
Because the basic action could be anything.
totally.
And so I think if he's going to switch from D&D to GURPS or Hero, that question in and of itself I don't think is super relevant, because that's going to really depend on the setting he's bringing into that generic system.
Yeah.
GURPS and Hero really affect the way you play as well.
That's true, they do.
I mean, I don't want to combat anything in GURPS, whether it's with a sword or anybody with a gun. I want to talk my way to everything, because you can literally die in one hit.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
I was. It maybe brings us to our third one if we're done with that one, which is looking at various systems. And I kind of feel like you need to stick with a similar system and maybe simplify. I was thinking maybe Tiny D6, because it still does everything that you want it to have done, but everything's simpler. And I don't know what it is. Again, we go back to my first question, which is why you want to switch systems in the first place. I'm going to guess because 3.5 is a bit unwieldy and kind of a mess, and so you just want to make it, and you want the flexibility of shoehorning in your homebrew without it breaking the established rules of 3.5. So I would say looking at something like Tiny D6 or what was the other one that popped into my head when I was
I was going to suggest maybe Dungeon World.
that was it.
Oh yeah, because I mean it's very much the flavor of D&D, but with the PBTA system. So I haven't played that one personally. It's one of the flavors of PBT I haven't tried yet, mostly because I don't want to play D&D, even if it's a D6.
Right.
We tried a Savage Worlds fantasy game, and it's okay, but it has a different. It's not D&D, and the thing that killed us, and maybe it's different now with the new ones. I haven't played Savage Worlds in a long time, which is when you turn to run away, you get the opponent.
Oh,
gets
the attacks of opportunity.
Attacks of opportunity.
Yeah, when you
and
disengage.
those were literally like would
Lethal.
wipe out a whole.
Yeah.
They're
Would wipe out a
murdery,
party.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, this doesn't work for your combats.
And you may have to house rule it up.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
there's just a certain point where this thing works different. You don't become harder and harder and harder to kill with a knife
Yeah.
in every other system than D&D.
And falling damage never becomes irrelevant in GURPS.
And GURPS and Savage Worlds and Hero are all point-buy systems. So you're going to be spending a lot of time finessing, what sword does what damage and why, and how your power works, and translating your magic missile over to something. All of that's going to take a lot of front-loading, a lot of work.
Once
and
you
it's
get
gonna,
that PhD
Yeah.
in Hero, once you've done it for a few years, you could do it in your sleep.
and once you do Hero, you can do Savage Worlds like that. That's from trigonometry to algebra. That's easy.
Yeah.
Now, he mentioned,
Wait, sorry, the chat had a couple of suggestions. Sixth World, no idea what that is.
Never heard of it.
Also, the Sprawl. It's hard to tell from chat, but the name of the Shadowrun Dungeon World setting, that might be what they're talking about.
That's
Sixth
the
World.
Sprawl.
It says.
That's the Sprawl? Okay.
I think that's
It's either the Sprawl or Sixth World. It's hard to follow the chat. I'm sorry. I've been talking chat. And Blades in the Dark and Band of Blades. They're both talking about they can be fantasy setting. Who like playing characters that are smarter than them. So those are all different suggestions, depending, again, like Stork was saying, on what you're looking for to improve or change in your game.
And now, he had that up earlier in the email. He said, wondering how you deal with the differences in a system when trying to convert the world, not so much the characters. That's not hard. I mean, in GURPS, I would sit down, if I wanted to remake a monster from the DMG or from the monster manual, I would just open it up and go, well, that seems pretty strong, so I'm going to give it a strength of 30.
Right.
Just kind of ballpark it.
And if you can go from feet to yards, you can.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You can know how long it takes to get to a castle.
Exactly. So it's not a big deal.
That's true.
I mean, you're going to be doing a lot of conversion of stuff. But I mean, as far as feel goes, you're definitely going to get a different feel with every system, and that is going to affect how people play. And you got to make sure they know that going into it. Don't bring them like if you're playing 4th edition D&D, it's damn hard to kill characters in 4th edition D&D.
Yes.
It's not it. I tried to kill you guys. And I couldn't. I didn't kill. I don't think I killed anyone.
And
No.
again, I mean,
We tried to die, and we couldn't die.
it's become my running joke now, which is like how you judge a system is about how much damage you take when you fall downstairs.
Yeah.
Right. And it's trite, but it does make sense. If you sit around and calculate how much damage you take falling downstairs, it really sums up what the system's going to be like when you play it.
Yeah.
It's like, clearly I'm immortal, it's not a problem, or ow, I literally died by the time I got to the bottom of the steps.
Right.
I don't want to play this game at
I'm
all.
going to be hospitalized for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks,
Right.
and I got to sit there, and because time management, I got to role play that shit out.
We had in our 5th edition game, Kimmy's character fell off of a scaffolding onto the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And we figured that it was like 50 feet
It
or
was so
something.
far.
And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, this is good. She's going to take some damage from this. But at that point, you guys were like, what, 7th or 8th level?
Yeah, we're pretty high. And
I looked it up and looked up what I'm like, really? That's it?
Yeah, it was not
You don't
at
even
all.
need Featherfall.
Yeah.
No.
Nope. I was a badass orc with some armor and
Right.
shit. And you're like, shouldn't the armor make it worse? I don't know. No, I
You
guess
would
not.
make it worse. You're right. He's got more
Yeah, you're basically
just jump out and
carrying
do the superhero landing for the 4 points of damage you took. and
you're
keep
carrying
going.
the hard surface you're going to fall on with you.
Is there any love in the chat room for a basic roleplay? Is that BRP?
I think so. They also echoed Dungeon World and Tiny D6.
Basic roleplay might be nice because it is basically it's just all the stuff stripped off, but it's very D&D like.
Well, I would wait until the new version of it comes
Yeah,
out
well,
because
yeah.
because 7th edition Call of Cthulhu, which is basic role playing, they've fixed the system in some significant ways.
Okay.
So I would be very interested. I don't know if they'll even come out with one, but if they come out with like a generic basic role playing using those changes, that would be a very interesting game, I think, to play.
I think, yeah, because I bought the basic roleplay book from I don't know what edition it was, 3rd maybe or 4th or something. A
I
couple
think
of years
they
ago.
only came out with
Strategic
one, and it
Okay.
went out of print fast. It sold like that.
I bought it from like the Warhorse thing. Because I remember I think I played a game with it at one of the last cons I went to a while ago. But I'm like, well, it's a robust little system. You know, it's got it's sort of everything stripped out of it, and it's just a role playing system. So. Again, it's what you're going for, but there's a lot of choices out there. I think once you figure out what it is you want out of your game, then you can start looking at the games you should go to. But I wouldn't default immediately to GURPS or Savage Worlds, even though they seem like great ideas. They may not be.
Yeah.
Trust me, GURPS, as much as Stu loves it, he even acknowledges it's not the right game for a lot of different systems. You can play anything in it, but should you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does realism good.
Yep.
It doesn't do like, I mean, you can tweak it to make it do pulpy sort of swashbuckler stuff, but it doesn't start out that way. If I wanted to use a crunchy system and do swashbuckler stuff, I'd use Hero
Yeah.
because I mean the stun damage is one of the
Right.
greatest mechanics ever.
Right, and you can kick people through walls.
Punch the crap out of people, and they just shake it off eventually.
And Hero would be good to play Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it
It
would.
would be bad to play Star Wars.
I'd
Yes.
actually Savage Worlds my Musketeer or pirate game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Chat is also suggesting the Index Card RPG, which I haven't read through yet, but I've heard good things about it. So does the chat. And Black Hack 2.0.
What's Black Hack?
I don't know.
These guys are so hip. We're all
I know.
having to write all
Oh,
this stuff down.
and the Genesis system. So, which is the generic
That-
system for
yeah.
Fantasy Flight. I know you don't like the special dice, Sue. He's making a face.
I don't mind the special dice. It's the unplayable system that bothers me.
But,
Actually, to be fair, I've not played.
yes.
I've read it. I haven't played it.
Yeah.
It seemed like it did everything under the sun.
Yeah, evidently
Right.
they have a new fantasy supplement out that has some good examples of stuff. I haven't played. We played L5R,
Mm-hmm.
which I liked elements of that a lot. I didn't necessarily like
The
some-
composure thing
yeah,
was cool.
Yeah, some of that stuff was really cool. I did like in our
Right.
Edge of the Empire FFG. There were some stuff I really liked in that too.
Hmm.
It was a little over complex for my taste generally, as far as the talent trees and stuff with the characters.
Fucking skill trees.
The skill trees, yeah. Sorry. I play video games. They are talent trees. But I have actually been interested. I have not purchased Genesis yet, but I am interested because I do really like the cool special dice.
What about that crazy game, Land of the Demon Lord, Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Oh.
Yeah, that
cool.
is a super high fantasy, super wacky, super magic-y system where anything happens. You play all these monster classes, and the supplements are going to give you all of this information on how to do these evil stuff. But, you can always go off the map and do your own thing.
So it's sort of a grim, dark fantasy.
It's very grim, dark fantasy.
Okay. Huh. I had not heard of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There it is.
Yeah.
By Robert Schwalb.
Tomes is in the chat room. He's like, I stand by my statement that all games can be played in For the Queen. That is so you, Tomes. We love
That's
you.
fine. All games can also be played in 10 candles.
Yes.
They'll be
Lady
short.
Blackbird.
They'll be short. They'll end horribly.
Yes. All right.
God.
God,
Now I want to do
We're gonna get a
a.
letter.
I want to do a 10 Candles Laser Ponies game.
We're gonna get a letter.
That would be awesome.
I chose to use 10 candles in my system, but they always end at TPKs. I don't understand.
Oh my god.
Are you familiar with 10 candles?
Yes.
Okay.
Looking forward to playing it next month.
Are you going to play
Tis
it?
the season.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Halloween, man.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Laser Ponies, 10 Candles, The Glue Factory. Oh, it's so sad and bad. Oh, I feel bad. Okay. Go to the next email quickly.
GM's Fun, a horror story from Lamasu. I'll read it. You want to read it? You want to split it?
Let's split it.
Wasn't a Lamasu like a creature from the...
Oh, you know what? I think you're right.
Yeah, wasn't it like a snake-like naga kind of thing?
Yeah, with a human head or
Yeah,
something.
I think it was. And I think it was spelled with 2 L's. Anyway.
Hi, all. Oh, go ahead. Hi, all. First-time writer. Been listening my way back through the backlog of shows to beginning and want to share this story with you and get your feedback. I started playing RPGs when I was about 8 or 10 years old, but I took about a 30-year break. That's a long break from gaming, and recently picked it up again. I was visiting one of my oldest friends and wanted to run him through a game with his son. I'm a fan of PBTA games and had prepared a loosely organized Monsters of the Week game for our little group to run through. My friend was inviting 2 of his friends to play as well. I feel like I was pretty clear with everyone that I wanted to play a game set in a modern-day city of San Francisco, sweltering in a savage heat wave.
It's like 85 and
Right? Take off your
Unless it's
sweater.
December, and then it might be 100.
it's true.
Yeah,
You're from there.
yeah. They have cool summers,
Yes.
but great weather.
What was it? Mark Twain's famous quote?
The coldest winter I ever spent was a
summer in San Francisco.
I was creating a dark scenario with a gritty feel to it, more akin to a modern horror film. He's playing this with... Oh, with it doesn't say how old his son is. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like 8. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Probably older.
There's the horror story. We met up for the first session to make characters and run through the opening part of the scenario. I had met one of the other gamers, but the second gamer, more my age, whom I'll call Joe, was new to me. I feel like I did a good job setting the scene and describing the tone of the game. We start making characters. Joe sets his heart on the expert character. What's your character like? I asked. He's a South Seas Islander who's hunting a witch doctor who killed his family, replies Joe. Okay, so far so good. Joe continues. He only wears a pair of shorts and a full, heavy black rubber overcoat. And he carries a harpoon everywhere with him.
Queequeg
What's the...
Yeah. It is.
from Moby Dick.
From,
Okay. You realize this is set in the city of San Francisco and that it's very hot. He did mention the heat wave.
Yeah.
Yes.
You will stand out like a sore thumb, and especially wearing a rubber overcoat. See, I was thinking rubber overcoat like some kind of kink thing or something. But you mean? But now I realize you mean like that big yellow.
Yes.
Yeah.
That wasn't what I was thinking of
The
when I
Gordon's
originally
Fisherman
read this.
thing.
Right, that wasn't what I was
But
thinking.
It's black, but yeah, back in the day, there were these big black sort of trench coat things that you would wear in
Okay.
inclement weather.
Rubber wax.
Yeah.
Right,
Raincoats.
right. 'Cause that wasn't what I was thinking of at all.
yeah.
But they were black rubber. Now
Yeah.
they're vinyl, and
Pretty.
I think vinyl's a different kink.
it is.
That is yeah. Similar.
No judgment.
No, none at all. Notwithstanding the fact that a harpoon may be illegal to carry in a lot of places, I ask. No, Joe is emphatic. This is how his character looks. The son of my friend, who is 14, decides his character, a spellslinger, will be a techno-mage whose powers are directed through his barbecue fork and a knife sharpening steel. He also goes everywhere with a cooking apron on. So they're making, like, makeshift superheroes, is what they're doing.
Yeah. And wacky ones at that.
Well, yeah, this is like Mystery Man San Francisco.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So far, the game is off to a rocky start for a grimdark real-world setting. The other characters are a mundane and a specialist, are both reasonable interpretations of the theme of the game. I sigh and move on into the game itself. The players are at the docks with a group of policemen investigating a ghost ship that had drifted in from Russia.
That's a cool plot. I'm stealing that.
On board, they find a grisly mess and a lone survivor who has witnessed some sort of atrocity. The police are escorting the witness and the players down the gangplank to the ship when Joe tells me, I grab the suspect and start to wrestle with him, pulling him away from the police officer. Why? I ask. No reason is given. So Joe begins to struggle with the witness. The policeman, who is an American-born but Spanish heritage, who the players know, is a somewhat dirty cop named Michael. He is furious and orders Joe to stop. Joe ignores him. He is ordered to stop again. He ignores the warning. At this point, Michael has drawn his gun and orders Joe to stop. Joe ignores him, so I have Joe act under pressure. He partially succeeds and wrestles the witness, the only witness to the mystery, away from Michael and releases him to run off into the press of people at the base of the gangplank. Joe then turns and addresses Michael, the policeman, calling him Miguel. Michael, who speaks no Spanish and is a native born in the U.S. and proud to be American, takes offense and sees this as a possibly racist slur given his heritage a generation or so removed. He makes it clear his name is Michael, that calling him Miguel seems like a slur on his heritage, and to turn around to submit to arrest for releasing the witness. Joe refuses while being held at gunpoint and still calling Michael by the name Miguel. At this point, I'm presented with a conundrum. Do I shoot someone who is resisting arrest and who is just intentionally, inexplicably released the only witness to a mystery, ignores commands being given by a gun-wielding police officer, and who insists on calling said officer by a name which the officer clearly states he finds offensive? Instead of shooting him, I cut to a different part of the scene and then return to all the players recovering from being pepper sprayed and summarily subdued in the back of a police car. This brings me to the crux of the issue. I feel like some players seek out the fun at the behest of the GM, at the behest of the GM's fun. They do this by causing as much chaos and disruption as possible. While this may be fun for them, it makes the GM's job more difficult and really impacts the game's collaborative storytelling nature. As a GM who goes through and prepares an adventure, players who find fun in trying to derail it at every step are my nemesis. I feel like players have an obligation to the GM to respect the GM's time invested running the game and the theme and the story. After all, the GM is the one of the players and deserves to be played with as a fellow storyteller instead of an adversary. Thoughts, sincerely, Lamasu. P.S. Drink for me, since I recently quit drinking.
We will do so. There's a lot here to unpack. Wow. Yeah, so right off the bat, it sounds like, there's a miscommunication or just no giving a fucks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one it is, but they either, didn't get it or got it and didn't give a shit.
They're teenagers. At least...
Well, the son is, but the other guy's his dad.
You said Joe's is his age.
His age.
Yeah.
The guy that's causing all this is his age.
How old is he?
Well, if it
His
was
son
30 years
is, his son is 14.
No, that's the other guy's son, isn't it? That was his friend's son. I don't know. No, he's old because he took a 30-year break.
Yes.
So you don't take a 30-year break.
My friend was
in his
inviting his two
40s.
friends
Right.
as well. I feel
At
like
least.
this is clear. Yeah.
We're doing this this word
Old
problem.
enough to know better. Yeah.
Old enough to know better.
Old enough to fucking know better.
Player selection.
Role playing is a relationship.
It
you
is.
know? It's an agreement to show up
Social
in
contract.
a timely manner, social contract, and play and give and take and compromise. It's like in any relationship.
Stu and I were once in a game where we really didn't like what was going on. We kept trying. We gave it the old college try, but after a while we were like, fuck this game, fuck these wizards, fuck this place, let's get the hell out of here. And we actively just tried to leave and get out of their storyline. But we didn't go so far as to like just kill all the witnesses so they didn't have any more story anymore. No. But we were like, well, I don't want to be part of this story anymore. Let's go somewhere else. Because there was multiple reasons. And I remember DMing a game way back in the day where somebody was just having a bad night. And so we're doing a superhero game, and it was supposed to be sort of fun little superhero game. And he made a vigilante, which actually later turned out to be him. And it was not fun. I mean, he would just go shoot people. So he'd set up a little mystery, and he'd shoot them, and you're like, okay, I guess you guys don't get all the clues you need to solve the mystery because he just shot him, which is very similar to this, which is why I'm now remembering it. It's sometimes players just are being just in the mood to be a dick or just in a bad mood, and you can't help that, even though you may have picked decent players and player selections.
But not all. I mean, not all players are suited for all games, and if he wants to run a real grim, dark game, you got to have people who are excited about playing in a grim, dark game. If you don't have that, you're probably not going to get it. You're not going to get what you want.
And so the other part of that is that sometimes the GM should give.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Your job is to be the adult in the room.
Right.
And if it's like an improv comedy scene, sometimes people are going to respond to you in a way that you completely didn't expect, and rather than saying no and blocking, you bend with it and go yes, and you accept what they threw you, even though that's not where you were going to go or what you wanted to do, and you riff off of it, and you might be surprised what happens. Clearly they were making, and you summed it up, they were making Mystery Men, and you were wanting to do Call of Cthulhu, or you wanted to do True Detective, and there is a balance that could have been met. You could have had True Detective meets Mystery Men with a little bit of work. And it's true. He's being a dick. He's basically tackling the witness and throwing him overboard so that you don't have a story anymore. But
that doesn't get rid of the story.
It doesn't get rid of the story.
There can be another witness on board.
But if you show up with your mind made up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
It sounds like you did a good job. Like, you described what you wanted before you made the characters, which is great. Like, that's a great best practice. It's not like you're like, okay, make your characters, here's the world you're in.
Now,
and, then they don't match. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was like a one-shot, because you said you were visiting one of your friends. So it doesn't sound like you were going to run this as a campaign.
Right.
So honestly, like, and it sounds like you were trying to, bend with the wind a bit and kind of keep it working. And the other two people kind of had it right, and these two people didn't. So yeah, it sounds like you're doing your best. Yeah.
But there's many times where I've just thrown out what I've been working in campaigns, especially. I mean,
what? No way.
Oh, what's going on in the
not,
Traveler game right now?
I'm not actually surprised. That was
is all improv.
That was sarcasm.
The Exodus game is all improv.
I figured.
It started when you guys got the ship. I'm like, how could this ship be useful?
Yeah.
That's when I started thinking about that.
I thought it would have been the Crystal Squirrels. Like, that was like way off the rails.
Right. But I mean, sometimes you gotta. It's collaborative, and like Mo said, the GM's got to give too.
Yeah.
If you're all gonna have fun at the table, and it's not happening because these two players want this kind of game and these two players want this kind of game, and you're with one side, maybe you kind of need to step a little over to the other side.
You showed up with your mind made up is a great quote.
There's another thing, kind of like dating. GMing has changed a lot in the last 30 years.
Yes.
We've come a long time away from that first, quote about how you manage time in a game.
Yeah.
And, people just expect a whole lot of different flavors of fun, and you kind of have to, come out of your cryogenic state and...
Okay, playing devil's advocate. Sometimes as a GM, I mean, you've spent time to craft a thing and you want to tell this great story, that you spent time with, because it's like, I have this really great concept. This will be really fun for a game. And then you show up and you set it up, and then your players throw it out the window, and you're like, but this, if you guys give it a chance, this is going to be cool, right? And you can say to yourself, well, you guys are railroading and yada yada, and you made up your mind. But there is a moment. You show up with the best of intentions as a GM, with an idea in mind that you want to entertain people with this story or this idea that you have, and sometimes you feel like you've been cheated out of your great storytelling moment. Now you've been knocked back on your heels and you're having to just sort of play defensive chess the entire rest of the game.
You prep less.
I guess you do at some point, but
Then you're not tied to anything. Then you're just like, no, this thing has to happen. You know what I mean?
I stopped gaming for 10 years, and I started writing stories.
yeah.
Because I knew how it was supposed to go.
But that's
And I didn't need any players messing it up.
That's not necessarily my point. I mean, like
It's not, but-
it's just that you have like I'm just gonna make it up. Like, let's say this ghost ship had the mummy of Rasputin on it, right? And that would have been a really cool twist. But we'll never know now because they're not going to go there. Now you're rocking back on your heels to come up with something else.
Now they're sitting in the back of a police car.
Right, right.
With pepper spray in their eyes. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's the best insight we can give you. It's not all your fault, but it's just a little. It's just a little. I think it is.
Well-
Isn't that fair? Is it fair to say? Isn't it?
I mean, it's.
Oh, good.
Fool me once, shame on you. You know, like, if there was another game, like, the question is, how do you calibrate?
Right.
Recalibrate.
And you did have warning when he said he wanted to dress up like the Gordon's fisherman with a harpoon. You're like, at that point, you're like,
Yeah.
clearly this is not going to fit the game. I had
Danger!
set up.
Danger!
Totally had a
danger.
different picture in my head.
Yeah,
Mine was way more Mystery Men.
yeah.
Yeah. I think what you're saying at the end, like some players seek fun, like at the cost of the GM's fun.
That's true.
There are definitely players
Yes.
who do that.
There are, yeah.
I don't think most players intend that. I think most players either simply don't register at the GM as a player and don't think about their fun, which isn't good either. Or they are just looking to like make the story more complex. And you need to just make sure if you have a player like that in your campaign, especially, that you have really good communication with them.
Right.
And like, hey, like I don't mind you doing this crazy stuff because it is interesting, but you know, just have really great communication with them. Jason is really good about this, and it tends to have people like do super crazy stuff in his campaigns because he's really good at that communication and rolling with it.
Yeah.
But you know, there's some GMs who aren't as comfortable with that and don't necessarily want that happening quite as much in their campaign. So just make sure you're talking to those players. And someone in the chat was like, "Why do we say that like one shot translates to players can do anything they want in
Right.
the game because of no consequences?"
Right.
And I just wanted to kind of go back and clarify. I'm kind of likening it to a sprint versus a marathon. If you have a rock in your shoe and you're sprinting 100 yards, you can make that, no problem. It kind of sucks, but not a big deal.
Yeah.
If you've got a rock in your shoe for a marathon, you will be bleeding and
Yes.
have like no skin on the bottom of your foot by the end of that marathon.
Right.
So you can put up with some discomfort for a short period of time much more easily than during a long form campaign. So it doesn't necessarily mean you should have to, but
Right.
you can.
And there is one other thing, I'm piggybacking on what you were saying, which is the worst case scenario is that this player likes to be the center of attention, and so they start sabotaging things so that the spotlight always gets thrown on them. And we've had emails about that and some other horror stories and things as well. And that's a player that is best avoided. Again,
Yes.
that brings you back to what you do, you
Yeah.
know, to make sure you vet your players. But players like that can be really hard to deal with. There is no good solution for that other than just saying, well, that's it. It's going to end the campaign, and then calling up the other players and starting another campaign.
Unless they're a perfect match for the flavor of campaign you want.
Right?
Sure.
If that's like the one thing, like if you decided to do a Mystery Man campaign and they like jumped in on it, they might be fantastic for that.
I am the waffler.
Yeah, that's like, and they will lean into that and they will like match perfectly. Or, you know, then they might be the dick who you do Mystery Man and they're like, no, I am. And they're like the one like serious character. and
They
you're
can be the Sphinx.
Yeah.
He's terribly mysterious.
not like that. But, so anyway. But good horror story. Thank you for sharing horror
Thank you.
stories. And send more emails because we need emails.
Yep,
right
We
now.
need more emails. All right. Thank you for joining us, Season 25, Episode 8 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
My name is Stuart.
My name is Mo.
And thank you for coming in, Mo.
Yeah.
Come back again, please.
Congratulations
Okay.
again for your Kickstarter.
Yeah.
That
Congratulations.
was funded
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you for all the awesome advice.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm full
Good
of it.
input.
and advice.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll see you next Friday at 7 p.m. 05 Pacific time.
Yeah.
happyjacks.org/live. And don't forget to email happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Check out happyjacks.org/schedule for all our upcoming games and also changes in the schedule. I know we have a couple games not happening this weekend because this weird group called the Boggards has some sort of gig. I don't know.
Yeah, if you live in Idlewild and you have an
Idlewild,
internet
right.
connection, and so you can somehow hear me, there's a Renaissance Fair this weekend. We'll be there Saturday and Sunday doing 3 shows a day.
And if nothing else, Idlewild makes a great name for your next Elven Forest.
There you go. Exactly. Thank you very much. We'll leave you with a song. Bye.
To avert a disaster, whether fate or curse or millions of apocalyptic acts, fellow listeners and every host will always have our backs. Unless you're playing D&D and then they'll give you crap. Tis 3:30 and the chill is gone. It's the longest binge I've ever been on. Had so many pints, my mind's stupefied. But through all the haze, I still hear them cry. Drink, motherfucker, drink. A curse to your lads, a curse on your head. Drinking pint after pint until I am dead. I just keep drinking and I don't know why. But tonight is the night that I drink till I die. It's 4:45 and I'm still going strong. Is this the only place I truly belong? To make it all end, I the good Lord beseech. Lying on the floor with my drink out of reach. Drink, motherfucker, drink. A curse to you lads, a curse on your head. Drinking pint after pint until I am dead. I just keep drinking and I don't know why. But tonight is the night that I drink till I die. It's 6 in the morning, can't remember my name. I see all the faces, they all look the same. And the puke on the floor makes a terrible stink. What is this demon that makes me want to drink? Drink, motherfucker, drink. A curse to you lads, a curse on your head. Drinking pint after pint until I am dead. I just keep drinking and I don't know why. But tonight is the night that I drink till I Drink, a curse to you lads, a curse on your head. Drinking pint after pint until I am dead. I just keep drinking and I don't know why. But tonight is the night that I drink till I die. It's now almost noon and the spinning has stopped. There'll be no more drink to the floor I do drop. And there's old Nick offering eternal pain. He smiles as he sings this infernal refrain. Drink, motherfucker, drink. A curse to you lads, a curse on your head. Drinking pint after pint until I am dead. I just keep drinking and I don't know why. But tonight is the night that I drink till I die. A curse to you lads, a curse on your head. Drinking pint after pint until I am dead. I just keep drinking and I don't know why. But tonight is the night that I drink till I die. Drink, motherfucker, drink.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.